Welcome to another free Friday Tidbit, and we're still in November. Thanksgiving is next week. It is now officially sweater weather. And we're still going to be talking about sensory systems and sensory motor integration this week. I wanted to talk with you a little bit more about the behaviors that can be elicited when we find ourselves overly sensitive to sights and sounds and smells, when we're feeling bombarded by stimuli that others might even find pleasant. So what are some examples? For instance, with sight. When I was training to be a certified facilitator of the neurobehavioral model, one of the slides that we worked with was a picture of a bedroom that a mom had just newly decorated for her daughter's sweet 16th birthday. And this is back in the 80s when an interior decorator named Laura Ashley was really, really popular. Laura Ashley's signature style, was very feminine with lots of florals. And living up to Laura's style, this bedroom was flowers everywhere. The wallpaper, the bedspread, the throw pillows, the curtains. There were so many flowers. And the mom was like, "Oh, this is so sweet. It's so romantic. My daughter's going to love it." But her daughter was on the spectrum and it was too busy. Her daughter couldn't stand to be in her room. Very quickly thereafter, they took the wallpaper down. They got rid of the bedspread and the throw pillows and everything else floral, and they went instead for a Zen look, very calming, very minimalistic, something that didn't fire off all her nervous system, right? When we are overstimulated, no matter which sensory system is involved, when we're overstimulated, we feel threatened. And I can tell you from experience, an example, if I am in a car and the music or the news or whatever's on the radio is too loud, I feel threatened. Not as if I'm in danger, but I feel as though I am being physically assaulted. It is physically painful if I'm in a very noisy environment. So that's another example. For our kids, being in a classroom that has no acoustic tiles, where and a tile floor and all the metal desk legs and chair legs, and the noises just kind of reverberate, as opposed to like the library that tends to be carpeted, right? Our kids can be so bombarded by all the noises, by the smells. Not every kid in the classroom is going to have good hygiene. And if you're overly sensitive, you're going to pick up on that, right? Bombarded by visual stimuli, especially in the primary grades. The classrooms have like every square inch of wall space is covered with another poster, and they all compete with one another for attention. But guess what? They're also all competing with the teacher. It can be really, really hard to filter out those things that you're really not supposed to pay attention to, right? Because you're supposed to focus on the teacher. Smell is another one, like I indicated, that can be triggered with hygiene issues. But more than that, smells are the number one way to pull up illicit memories. In other words, those memories that are formed and stored away before we have any verbal skills, right? When we think of memories, we think in terms of the words, right? Just like when we are thinking, we hear ourselves talking in our mind, right? We think in our own voice. But when things happen to us, when we go through experiences prior to having those language skills, then memories get encoded in feeling states, and smells bring those up in a very powerful way. It might be 50 years later, but if you smell Old Spice, you might remember the man that abused you. Right? So we have to be aware of what are all the smells, and it might not even be that. You just might be really sensitive. For instance, my husband loves spicy food. A lot of people do, and we live in Southern California, so of course, spicy foods rule around here. But I cannot stand the smell of vinegar. Well, what's in all those sauces? Vinegar. And what makes the scrambled eggs delicious for him makes me want to move my plate over because I can't stand the smell of the vinegar, right? Taste is another one. We may have, well, this isn't really hypersensitive, but we may have peculiarities as to what we can tolerate, right? I'll never forget getting a box of Triscuits. You guys know Triscuits, right? From the grocery store at the Nabisco crackers, and they come in a whole bunch of flavors. And every now and then they have a sale. If you buy 8 boxes, you get $8 off. Well, my husband came home with a bunch of different flavors of Triscuits one week. And we opened one, and I had never heard of the flavor before. And I put it in my mouth. And if you know Triscuits, they're very dry. And when you chew them, they break into the really fine, kind of like needles of wheat. It's kind of like shredded wheat in cracker form. But because this taste, it really was comical, guys. You would have laughed your butts off if you had been able to see me, because I had conniption fits. I couldn't stand it. I had all these pieces of wheat on my tongue that I couldn't get rid of, with the most foul taste. To me, it was right on par with vomit. It was some Greek flavor. See, I don't know what it was. Anyway, yeah, couldn't stand it. And it was comical. It was truly comical, but I was having none of it. And it's not like I'm a 2-year-old, although you might have thought so by watching me that day. But we can have really strong reactions to things when we have sensory issues. So just be aware of the environment. Know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, for your child, for your employee, right? I remember a couple of years ago, we had an employee that, or I had a coworker that had a lot of allergies and couldn't stand a lot of scents. So no one was allowed to wear any perfume or cologne, right? So that she could concentrate on her work, right? Hold that against her? Of course not. It's just the way she's wired, right? So be aware of the environment. What can you or your child tolerate? What sensory input do you need more of? Add it to the environment. What do you need less of? Make things a little more plain, either with sound or sight, right? Accommodate, adjust the environment to be able to boost productivity. So that's it for this free Friday tidbit. So come back on Monday to this YouTube channel at Patricia Casper, your FASD coach, because on Monday we will have another episode dropping of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patty Casper. And next week is Thanksgiving, which means on Monday's episode of Living with FASD, I will be sitting down with the Robbie Seal, who is the host of the FASD Family Life podcast. And she and I have become delightful friends. And we're just going to be looking back at all that we have done over the past year in terms of working in the FASD space and supporting those who have fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, as well as where do we want to go. We do similar work. She's also in human services, and our work is different, but not too dissimilar. But anyway, tune in. We're going to have a great conversation, and come back again next Friday for another free Friday tidbit. Have a good weekend and an enjoyable week next week. And happy Thanksgiving.